Hi, and welcome everybody to the OSGA YouTube channel. I'm professional sports handicapper Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com. Once again, I'm joined on Mondays by my buddy and great sports handicapper, especially Major League Baseball right now. He's tearing it up, folks. Mr. Doug Upstone from DocSports.com. Doug, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing excellent, Ross. Just off another weekend. It was wild around here. We had all kinds of rain. I mean, for here, which
Wow.
never happens. And like where I live, we had 2.5 inches of rain yesterday, about 3 hours. So it was coming down. Cooler temperatures. It was like low 80s. It was like
Yeah.
that's low 80s isn't even what our normal lows are like, let alone the daytime highs. So it
Yeah.
was crazy. But hey, you know what? We're back with some more sports betting. We got a new week to attack. Like you said, in baseball in particular, we got NFL not that far away, college, a lot of talk. So here we go. Let's
Yeah,
get it done again.
I'm rearing and ready to go. For those of you who aren't familiar with Doug and he's talking about the weather, he is from the great state of Arizona. So that's why 80-degree temperatures in July in Arizona, folks, that's a real rarity. So, and rain is a real
Yes.
rarity too. So, Doug, before we get going, again, Doug is from DocSports.com. Great site, folks. Great handicappers on that site. Doug being one of them. And Doug, you're having a terrific Major League Baseball season. So before we get to our MLB free picks, why don't you tell the folks how they could find you at Doc Sports and what you got going on and how you've been doing?
Okay, well, Ross, real simple. The name couldn't be any easier. It's Doug Upstone, just like it sounds. So that's easy enough to remember. And like I said, and you'll see this mug at Doc Sports when you go there. Hopefully, when you look at it, I'm up towards the top of the leaderboard on the weekly. Do that, but no, baseball has gone extremely well since May 9th, 82 and 59. Doc's units run 1 to 7. So in terms of units, I'm up almost 8,000 units in that period of time. So we're talking 10 plus weeks now. It's been consistent. I think that's the biggest thing. And Ross, one thing, and I know I mean, we both have our hot and cold streaks as things go along. But one of the things that I find that people really appreciate, and I know the same goes for you, is when you're consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have the things, if we're talking about units or even, talk about records, if you're, let's say 20 and 7 one week, and then you come back and you're 7 and 20 the next,
Yeah.
that doesn't build a lot of, you lose people, let's put it that way. And so when you're consistent, and even if, some weeks you even have a losing week a little bit, but, people, if you've won 4 weeks in a row, there's, hey, you know what, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
So that's always kind of how I've been when I'm going well, is that I don't have necessarily high highs, but I certainly avoid the lows. And that's just been my style for whatever reason. I have no idea. It's not a style. It's just the way things work out.
Yeah,
But,
you're cognizant of it, right, Doug? And
absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
yeah, I mean, I think and I feel the same way, and I can't speak for Doug, but I think what he's trying to say is we try to avoid, um, 3 weeks in a row where you're below 50%. You try to avoid those 0-5 nights, and then turn around the next day and chase that night and go 1-4. And all of a sudden, somebody who just signed up with you 2 days ago is 1-9 and out of money. So we try to avoid that. And if you could do that over the long haul, now you're going to have those days, right, Doug? And you're going to have losing weeks. I mean, the bottom line is if we were winning every week, you wouldn't be talking to us right now, folks. We'd be floating on an island with a nice cocktail in our hand, even though we do that anyway. But having said that, Doug, you like to bring up some good sports betting topics. And again, folks, we're recording right now on Monday, the 26th, and we're going to give you 2 free winners on Tuesday, the 26th in Major League Baseball. But before we get to that, Doug, you always have some kind of hot topic you like to talk about in sports betting.
Well,
Anything come to mind?
yeah, for sure. On this one, Ross, but we're going to change it up a little bit and look at it a little bit differently. So this is for all the people that watch Ross's videos and OSGA followers and readers and everything else that goes on there. So this is for that. My question is, okay, who do you think is the worst team in baseball? okay, in anyone's opinion. So in the comment section on this video, please chime in. And along with that, who's the worst bet? Now, I'm going to throw out some stuff. I have an opinion, of course, but I'm going to throw this out first, and then everybody can kind of let it soak in, and then, put your opinions, and of course yourself, Ross, too. Now, by record, it's easy. It's Arizona, 31-70. I mean, that's wow. And that includes a four-game winning streak last week, by the way. Texas has surpassed Baltimore as the second worst team, thanks to their current 12-game losing streak. Okay. They have done a great job of just getting pounded every single day. And of course, the aforementioned Orioles, who were, I forget what site it was, but they were given less than a 1% chance of reaching the playoffs going into this season this year. So all of those teams are doing different things. Now, in terms of money, okay, in terms of losses, units lost so far, the worst is the Diamondbacks. The Twins fall in there at 29, Rangers 28, Yankees at 27, and the Orioles at 25. And one more thing to ponder, okay, in terms of how badly these teams are getting beat, the Diamondbacks are getting beat by 1.5 runs per game. The Birds are at 1.3, and the team from the Lone Star State on the west side of the state, they're getting beat by 1.2 runs per game. So there's some information for you, Ross. Let me know what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you go over the four worst teams in terms of money lost, and people probably are surprised by the Yankees only because they're like 5 games or 4 games over 500. But keep in mind, folks, this is a heavily bet team, and they were predicted to be real good this year. And you're laying a hefty number on the Yankees for most of the season. So if you add all those numbers up, and I should say subtract all those numbers, you find the reason why. Especially Arizona and Texas, I will say, well, more so Texas. Well, both of them, Texas and Arizona, terrible on the road. I mean, I believe not only are they on a 12-game losing streak, Doug, I think they're like 4-29 in their last 33 on the road or something ridiculous like that. So now here's the bad part. We found Baltimore, Texas, and Arizona as teams that are depleting bankrolls this year. The problem is going forward, folks, you're going to have to lay a hefty number to bet against them. So I would really, really focus on if you don't want to lay those hefty numbers, entertain the run line once in a while. Doug just mentioned run differential. I mean, it's no fluke. Arizona is not only on a bad streak right now, but they're minus 1.5 runs per game on the season. And that's just absolutely horrific. Any other final thoughts, Doug?
Yeah, for me, I actually, believe it or not, I took in a game last week with the Diamondbacks. They played Pittsburgh, who would probably fit close to 4th on the list if I wanted to go that far. But my daughter was in town, so she wanted to go to games. So I said, well, that's what we get, that's the timing. But no, I mean, the Diamondbacks are horrible. Okay. I mean, they have no redeeming values. I was surprised they didn't fire, even though I think their manager is actually a good manager. I'm surprised they didn't fire him at the All-Star break. So that was a little bit of a mystery to me, but be that as it may, I mean, he's obviously dead man walking. This is a terrible team. They play with little emotion. They find ways to lose continually. Yes, you're going to, suffer some losses if you bet against them because they are going to win some games. But, and the worst part for them, at least Texas has Joey Gallo and Kyle Gibson to move. Okay. Yeah. So they have something. The Diamondbacks have nobody that anybody wants. So they're going nowhere. The farm system's a mess. So I'm going to say the Diamondbacks are my worst team, not just because I live here, just because I've watched enough of their games along with many others. And in terms of betting, okay, I just think that you have to look at all 3 of them every single night. But in particular, I think the Diamondbacks, and if the price is too high, don't bet it. Or as Ross said, go with the run line.
Yeah, or either that, if you usually bet to win $100, hypothetically, risk 100 instead of betting to win 100. Okay. If you really need to lay the big, I just don't lay that kind of price. If I'm going to entertain doing that, I'm going to do the run line and try to get a better value for the dollar. Of course, you got to win by 2 or more runs, but we're talking about terrible teams. One team that Doug mentioned and brought up is a team that's in the bottom 5 as far as money lost is the Minnesota Twins. Now, this Twins team had high expectations this year, as opposed to the other 4 that he mentioned, and they just vastly underachieved. And I don't see them improving much. Okay. Now, there's a team that you could fade in the second half here and probably get pretty good numbers at times to fade them. Why I say that, Doug, is not only have they underachieved, now you got rid of Nelly Cruz. Okay. I think that's just the beginning of a plethora of players now that they're going to sell at the trade deadline. So I don't see their situation improving. Their pitching, other than Barrios, their bullpen is shaking. So they got some real problems in Minnesota. And it's really surprising. Out of all the teams we mentioned, and the Yankees, of course, too. But out of the other teams that have losing records, Minnesota, definitely a team I would look to fade because you're going to get some pretty good value at times betting against them. Doug, let's get to our free pick.
All right. Well, let's start it off with a big game on Tuesday night. Okay. Now, last week we saw the San Francisco Giants at the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, now we're changing venues. Okay. It's going to be on the South Bay or in the South Bay, San Francisco. Now, the Giants won 3 out of 4 last week at Dodger Stadium. The last 2 in spectacular fashion, okay, in fact, the last 3 games of that series, the team going into the 9th inning had a run of 3 or more runs and lost each time. But for the Dodgers, that was the last 2 with Kenley Jansen not getting the job done. Now, in this one, the Giants, though, didn't take full advantage of that, Ross, because then they played Pittsburgh the next 2 games and lost them both. So they kind of gave away what they had. So 3-game lead, 3-game lead in the loss column, by the way. So if you look at the standings, it says too, I always go this, once we get to this time of year, I always talk about the loss column because everybody's going to play 162 games. Okay. So so that's always been my story. In this one, got Julio Urias against Logan Webb. They just faced each other last week, 6 days ago. And in that game, the Giants won, but Urias was great. 7 innings, 1 run, the bullpen looked for him. Okay, so it was there to do. Now, the Dodgers are without Mookie Betts. Bellinger's hitting 161. Okay, so they got some issues on offense. Now, their pitching is still probably good enough, even though if it's a close game, who's going to close for them? Joe Kelly the other day? I didn't even, I almost
the way Kelly Jansen's going, Doug, you know what I mean? You got to might something. As well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find somebody. I like Bickford, but he's still inexperienced and still learning the role. Giants, I like this team because they're averaging 5 runs per game at home. They're averaging 4.8 on the road. Okay, it's a consistent team. They don't beat themselves. I think we talked about that recently as well. They're just a solid ball club. The Dodgers are a -130 favorite as we do this, and I am going with the San Francisco Giants at +120 for my free play on the show today. I like the fact that Webb is 9-1 with his teammates against teams that strike out 7 or more times in a game. So I'm going to ride the San Francisco Giants to get the job done, Ross. There you have it.
As Bill Rafferty would say, onions. He likes the San Francisco Giants. Can't disagree with him. Makes all very good points. You could see by the analysis that Doug just gave you why he's the best MLB handicappers in the country right now and has been for the last few years. Kelly Jansen, before I get to my free pick, Dave Roberts comes out in the media last week and blasts the fans because they had been booing Kelly Jansen for, some of his underperforming, I would say, this year in terms of being a closer. And what's he do? The next night, lo and behold, 3-run lead going into the 9th, and he blows it. So, hey, I don't know what you want to do going forward, Davey Roberts, but I would be real careful before you start lambasting the fans. I get what he's saying. But anyway, you know what I mean, Doug? It never seems to fail. You go to bat for somebody, and what do? They let you down. So.
Well, and Jansen, in fairness to him, he was actually having a very good year. Okay. Yeah. I mean, his ERA was under 2. He had some blown saves, but most of those were just one-run games, stuff like that. And every reliever, I don't care
Oh, yeah.
how good you are. And the biggest thing with him, this has been going on for a few years, the days of throwing 97, 98 are long gone. He's 92, 93, even with the juiced gun. So he just doesn't have the variety. So he change his delivery. He's got more off-speed stuff. He's been quite effective this year, but he just hit a bad time against the wrong opponent. Let's face it, if they lost to Colorado or Pittsburgh or something like that, who's paying attention? Only Dodger fans.
Right.
On a national stage in a big game, this is why it's so bad.
Yeah, and maybe it is time to make him a setup man or a seventh inning guy. Doug, prototypical closers across the league are not throwing 92. They're fireballers, and Kelly Jansen has always depended on his fastball for the most part. I get he's trying to transform his repertoire, and rightfully so. And I don't know if you want to be making that kind of adjustment and then throwing at that low of velocity by closer standards and keep him as your closer. I think he'd be much better suited if he went through a seventh or eighth inning role and take some pressure off the guy as well. Give somebody else a shot and maybe just stepping away from the closer role for a while and then maybe going back to it later. We saw that work as many times as well, right, Doug? So,
absolutely. Well, if Trinan is their other guy, that they've been using as their setup guy recently in eighth innings, and he went through a tough stretch too, where he wasn't pitching well, but in the last week or so, he's been better. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of steps into that role more. Yeah. Kelly was easy, just as a surprise move almost. So we'll see what the Dodgers do. I just don't think they're going to do it on Tuesday night, Ross.
And I agree with you. And I hope for your sake, you're right, because solid information there from Doug Upstone. Again, you could find Doug at docsports.com. Great website, great handicapper. I know he's my buddy. I'm a little biased, but like I always say, folks, when you look at records, numbers don't lie and liars don't figure. Anyway, the Toronto Blue Jays at the Boston Red Sox tomorrow night. Interesting matchup. Doug, I mentioned to you last week when we talked about teams that we see surging in the second half, and I mentioned Toronto as my team to surge. Now, they haven't quite done so yet, but here's the thing. I often tell people, think like a bookmaker, think like an odds maker. Respect an odds maker. Don't fear him, but don't think you're smarter than him. Use his knowledge to your benefit. Okay, so here we have Toronto at Boston, game at Fenway Park. Robbie Ray on the mound for Toronto and Garrett Richards for Boston. Toronto right now, as we speak, again, folks, we're taping 24 hours in advance, so our lines are subject to change. But right now, Toronto is a minus 125 money line favorite. On the road at Boston. Mind you, the Boston Red Sox right now lead the AL East, and Toronto is third, 9.5 games behind Boston. So the books just don't give money away. A team that's 9.5 games behind on the road, and they're the favorite in the game. Well, you look inside the numbers. Garrett Richards, the last seven, how about a 7.24 ERA and 186 WHIP? That's not good at all, folks. He struggled against Toronto this year. He's faced them 4 times. A 5.58 ERA and a 172 WHIP. And, I put a lot more stock in WHIP, Doug. So I think that 5.58 ERA, he's very lucky it's even that low with a 172 WHIP. He's probably wiggled out of a lot of jams without looking any further. And Robbie Ray's pitched really well. He's really turned in to probably Toronto's ace right now. And his last 4 starts, a 2.10 ERA, an 0.82 WHIP. And he did struggle a bit in his last start against Boston, where he was victimized by the long ball. But his 2 starts against Boston have been pretty solid, other than surrendering the long ball. And I think Toronto will score a plethora of runs tomorrow night. And again, folks, think like a bookmaker. Okay, we're going to be go the contrarian approach here and take the Toronto Blue Jays minus 125 on the road at Boston. Talk about onions, right, Doug? San Francisco Giants plus 120 over the LA Dodgers for Doug Upstone. Ross Benjamin is going to take the Toronto Blue Jays minus 125 at Fenway Park tomorrow night. Good luck, folks. Until the next time, good luck. God bless. And I wish you nothing but the very best with your picks.